Love him or hate him, Donald Trump's persona has been fascinating and confusing for years. While many details about his businesses and personal life remain tangled in controversy, some undeniable truths about the 45th President of the United States have been revealed. Here are some of the false facts about Donald Trump you probably thought were true. The truth about Trump's net worth is a topic of much debate. When he announced his presidential run, he estimated his worth at around $10 billion. As of September 2016, Forbes put that figure at $3.7 billion, while the Washington Post reported $150 million to $250 million after subtracting debts and other liabilities. What can be deduced with a level of relative certainty is how Trump started to accumulate however much wealth he has. While campaigning for the Republican nomination, Trump attended a town hall where one attendee asked him how he got his start. His response?
It has not been easy for me. And, I started off in Brooklyn. My father gave me a small loan of $1 million.
Setting aside his somewhat humorous characterization of $1 million loan as small, the actual amount he borrowed over time from his father was around $14 million, which, adjusted for inflation, would be around $31 million today, according to the Wall Street Journal. Whether Trump turned that $14 million into $150 million or $10 billion is irrelevant, because either way he made a ton of money. But to posture himself as a struggling entrepreneur is undeniably misleading. Trying to understand bankruptcy law gets a little tricky, but the fact of the matter is that out of the 515 businesses that Trump is involved with, only 3 of his companies have ever declared bankruptcy, one of which, Trump Entertainment Resorts, did so twice in 5 years. Trump himself has never declared personal bankruptcy, and in an interview with ABC News, he maintained that what happened to his companies that did file for Chapter 11 was merely a fantastic deal in which he, quote, used the laws of this country to pare debt. Fair enough. Lots of corporations use bankruptcy laws as a way to renegotiate debt and restructure ownership, but what about the infamous moment during his first debate with Hillary Clinton in which he admitted that due to a $916 million net operating loss, he was able to not pay federal taxes for years? According to the New York Times, this loss was reported on Trump's 1995 federal tax return and was a direct result of the financial wreckage he left behind in the early 1990s through mismanagement of 3 Atlantic City casinos, his ill-fated foray into the airline business, and his ill-timed purchase of the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan. Trump famously referred to the maneuver as smart. Not only did personally losing almost $1 billion not leave him in financial ruin, but he found a tax loophole that would help him get back some of those losses, and went on to become a television star and president of the United States.
I know all these things. I'm not a baby. I know all these things.
One thing's for sure, it's a touchy subject for the president. Back in 2011, he agreed to be the subject of a Comedy Central roast, and according to HuffPost, producers always ask the star if any topics are out of bounds. Trump had too. Roasters couldn't suggest that he isn't as wealthy as he's publicly claimed, or make fun of his history of bankruptcies. While he was still campaigning for the Republican nomination, Trump said at one of the debates, "I don't have to give you a website because I'm self-funding my campaign. I'm putting up my own money." But according to the Washington Post, as of January 2016, not only was most of Trump's campaign donor-funded, but his website actually did have a donate button on its homepage. According to campaign finance watchdog site Open Secrets, Trump contributed more than $56 million to his own campaign, which ultimately raised more than $306 million during the course of the election process. Campaign finance is a thorny issue with many complicated facets, and there's arguably not a reasonable expectation that a candidate wouldn't take donations. It's a way for the public to be involved in the political process. But everyone can probably agree that using a cut-and-dry term like self-funded only works like this in the arena of politics. Trump's hair is his defining physical characteristic. There's no other public figure whose locks have fascinated so many people, and there's a ton of speculation about whether Trump has hair plugs, a toupee, or some kind of transplant that only billionaires can afford. Gawker even did a lengthy and impressively in-depth examination that strongly suggested Trump was getting non-surgical exclusive treatments called microcylinder intervention. However, the article really couldn't prove anything, and if you look at Vanity Fair's illustrated recorded history of Trump's hair, it's clear he's been swirling and combing his hair in the same strange way since the 80s. But still, it could have been fake way back then, right? According to Trump's former hairdresser, Amy Lash, the answer is definitely no. That mind-bending mop on Trump's dome is 100% authentic. In an interview with The Mirror, Lash said, "He does it himself. It is real and it is his hair. He doesn't have plugs." It's worth noting that Lash is by no means a Trump loyalist. She also referred to the president-elect as flirty, inappropriate, and chauvinistic. So if she had an axe to grind, blowing Trump's cover would have been a power move for the ages. Trump's alleged draft dodging has been the subject of many think pieces, including one Daily Beast article which claims that Patty McGann, Trump's lawyer and alleged fixer during his Atlantic City days, used to frequently refer to him as a draft-dodging bastard. The reality is that Trump did in fact register with the Selective Service before receiving 4 college deferments, according to Snopes. College deferments were standard practice at the time, so where did the controversy and assertion that he evaded military service come from? According to the New York Times, in 1968, after Trump's 4th and final deferment, he was once again eligible for the draft. At this time, the United States was sending troops to Southeast Asia in the ramp-up to the Vietnam War. Trump eventually received his lottery number like anyone else eligible for the draft, but it didn't matter because he'd also secured a medical deferment for bone spurs in both his heels. When asked about his condition through the years, Trump had what some view as a muddled history of responses. Then there was his arguably clumsy gaffes during the campaign in relation to Senator John McCain's military service.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
As well as his remarks about the Gold Star Khan family.
If you look at his wife, she was standing there. She had nothing to say. Maybe she wasn't allowed to have anything to say. You tell me, but plenty of people have written that.
Understandably, all of these things put together led to heightened scrutiny of Trump's own service record. One of the frequently quoted praises of Trump is that he's a branding genius, which may seem true considering his filing to the Federal Election Commission reported that 268 companies bear his name, according to the Washington Post. A closer look reveals that many of the businesses and buildings adorned with his famous golden Trump logo are merely licensing deals. NPR found that in some cases the Trump name is only left behind as a contract stipulation as part of the sale of a building, which means his name sits on properties he no longer owns. Then there are his actual brands that represent businesses he does or did own, many of which have not seen success. Trump Steaks have been a late-night talk show punchline for years. The Trump Shuttle, also known as Trump Airlines, was a disaster. He launched Trump Mortgage a year and a half before the housing market crashed. All 3 Atlantic City casinos that bore his name have closed, and his so-called Trump University had to pay a $25 million settlement over fraud allegations in a high-profile class action lawsuit. While it's remarkable, Trump still attempts to trade on his name as the epitome of luxury and success in the face of so many spectacular failures. It doesn't seem particularly genius to slap your name on a bunch of duds, especially the casinos. Trump won the Republican Party the White House for the first time in nearly a decade with his victory in the 2016 presidential election. He was something of a dark horse candidate from the start, unlike primary rivals Senator Ted Cruz and Governor Jeb Bush. Trump boasted no prior governing experience. As a proud political outsider, the Donald was thus not part of the mainstream GOP establishment. In fact, he hadn't even been a registered Republican for all that long. According to PolitiFact, Trump registered as a Republican in 1987, but 2 years later switched his affiliation to Independent, and for the next 20 years he donated heavily to Democratic candidates. In 2000, Trump ran for president for the first time, winning the California primary for the Reform Party. The following year, Trump filed the paperwork to make himself a Democrat. In mid-2009, Trump switched for the last time back to the Republican Party. Before he was the President of the United States and the host of The Apprentice, Trump was a New York real estate mogul. And since that city is the media capital of the Western world, his professional and personal activities were dutifully reported, making the Donald into a nationally known figure as well as one of the most famous businessmen in 1980s America. In 1987, Trump capitalized on that image and status by publishing The Art of the Deal, a mixture of a business and negotiation how-to manual manual and professional manifesto. The book was wildly successful, spending 13 weeks at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list and nearly a year on the chart in total, according to The New Yorker. The art of the deal certainly seems like a very Trumpian image-building, money-making opportunity, and it was. It just wasn't Trump's idea. In 1984, GQ published an issue featuring a cover story on Trump, and Cy Newshouse, head of the company that owned GQ's publisher, noticed that newsstand sales were extremely robust. Newshouse's conglomerate also owned book publisher Random House, and he reached out to Trump about writing a full-length book. After showing the future president a mock-up, freelance writer Tony Schwartz was hired to shadow Trump and ghostwrite The Art of the Deal. Trump didn't need a political background to acquaint himself with the national voting public. He'd already made himself a familiar face by starring on more than a dozen seasons of the NBC reality series The Apprentice. Debuting in early 2004, right when reality television was at its most culturally powerful through competitive sensations like American Idol, Big Brother, and Survivor, The Apprentice pitted driven professionals against one another, vying for the chance to work for Tycoon Trump and his vast corporate organization. The show, in which people had to perform business-building tasks each episode, became a top 10 hit for NBC, and Trump has claimed he personally earned $214 million over the length of the show. But it wasn't his idea. The whole endeavor came to Trump like a gift-wrapped package. Survivor executive producer Mark Burnett pitched the show to Trump, who initially turned down the idea. According to the Washington Post, he didn't want to be associated with the world of reality television, allegedly telling friends, "Reality shows were made for the bottom feeders of society." But Burnett eventually convinced Trump that the show could help both promote and brand the Trump name by featuring the man as the very idea of success itself and showcasing Trump properties. The real estate developer signed on, and the rest, as they say, is history. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Nicki Swift videos about your favorite celebs are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.